Hello, and we're live. We're back. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the brief intermission. We lost the frequency there for a moment, but we're back and live and ready to have our discussion. Thank you so much for joining Omi's production studio. I am no longer just Omi Inca 7, and you cannot find me on the roster under Omi Inca 7 anymore, or you can't find me under Omi Inca 7 and Tribe, nor Sherelle, but you can find me under Omi's production studio. So if you need to write that down, please do. Make sure you go and subscribe at the bottom. Subscribe to my monetized channel. Make sure that you also become a follower and write something that is referencing to our conversations, and you're giving your input will help us to know which direction we're going in. We've been trying to do an assessment of our Africans Americans here at stateside in the diaspora. We've been trying to get input from our African families as to how they feel about us having the same problems that our African brothers and sisters are having abroad. First of all, we have to know that our African brothers and sisters abroad did not experience the same type of chattel slavery that we experienced. Theirs was mostly on a different frequency than ours, and they don't have the same troubles that we have. But after they come to America and spend time here, we find that they too start having the same problems: the crab syndrome, the Willie Lynch syndrome, as some would call it. Now, we try to define the Willie Lynch theory by giving a brief description, saying that it was an actual consultant that was solicited for to teach the slave owners how to prevent their slaves from running away so that they can save their investment and they wouldn't lose money on their investment. And he described for them a technique that they can use to keep the darker turned against the lighter, to keep the one that is more feeble-minded against the more intellectual, to turn them against each other through aesthetics, the way they look, or to turn them against each other based on what monetary gains they had. And I presume that we are still fighting with these same problems, and they have not gone anywhere, even though we've become more civilized. We're still tussling with, am I better than that other black? Is he better than me? Do I live in a more affluential neighborhood than he does? And where I live and my address, does it make me a better person than him? And what I like to say is that we've got to debrief that myth, and we got to debunk it, and we got to put it to rest. And that's what I'm here to talk about. How do we put it to rest? We even have family members that are of the same blood that we're of. And just because they can move out to the affluential neighborhoods, they separate themselves from their own black family members. And the closer they get to white, the more they think that they have privileges. And we even have to caution those African American brothers and sisters who go and marry outside the race to remind them that they're no better than their African brothers and sisters just because they've gotten closer to rubbing shoulders with white. So if we're going to be in this man's war and army, we've got to determine where we stand. We can't, in the middle of war, step up and say, well, that's not my problem. We can't step up and say, well, your problems are not my problems, and I'm not concerned about what your tribe is going through. We have to be concerned about all of it. And we have to come to grips with these material things that are dividing us. And young people, more so than ever before, are horning down on these material things, and the more things that they can spend their money on and purchase, the better off they think they are. As Africans, there is a struggle going on, and it has nothing to do with the material gain or wealth that you can stockpile. It has nothing to do with how many extra pairs of jeans you have, or how many extra pairs of gym shoes you have in your closet, or how many extra cars you have out in the driveway. These things we must get over. We must get over the monetary, materialistic state and go to a spiritual state where we know that it's far better to have acquaintances that are genuine and that are real than to count it all joy that the more material things we have, then that makes it easier for us to be able to get what we want. Not necessarily. Yes, money will buy a whole lot of things, but it won't buy respect and pride. And that's what we as Africans got to hold up. We got to hold up the vision that we are prideful people and we believe in equality for all. And therefore, the Africans are not separating themselves from the African Americans in the diaspora. They are particularly making sure they point out the Africans from the diaspora being the same as the Africans abroad and having the same fight that they have, and knowing that they will put up a fight for us just because we are of the same bloodline. And when blood calls, blood answers. And we have to know this because we need to put down these old myths about how we're still entangled into the Willie Lynch theory and how they believe a black is never going to do anything. All these false cliches that they have put on us as myths. And we've become victims of our own demise, and we begin to believe our own myths and allegorical stories. But we have to come to the conclusion that we've got a lot of thinking to do about our belief system and about how we feel about ourselves. We should have overcome by now. We should be in a better position to believe that we are royalty and that our ancestors were royalty, and we cannot sub anything or get beneath or below anything. We will always remain on top because we are the first world indigenous people. We must continue to tell ourselves that. And we are gentile people. Say it with me, gentile people. Gentile people are those people that do things in a specific way, that are classy and highly respected, and we set the trends for the rest of the world. And we've got to come to that conclusion that that's where we live at. That's our address. That's our MO. We've got to get to that point, else we will never be anyone's person other than a slave servant. Now, the Africans were not enslaved like we were. They have a sense of dignity and pride that they live up to, and that they carry themselves in the utmost respect, knowing that they can command respect because they weren't tied down and tarred and beaten, and they had honor amongst their tribe. We share in that same honor, and they've allowed us to share in that honor, and we must take our proper places and accepting those positions to stand with them in honor and solidarity. But we cannot continue to call ourselves a Negro or a nigger. These are not words that come from the African. These were words that the Spanish put up on us. But we don't have to accept it. We don't have to embrace it. And we certainly don't have to use it as the makeup of the African. The makeup of the African we must define as royalty, gentile. We must define it as those who were in rulership and who will rule again. And we must be mindful of the fact that the African's burden is the African American's burden. And we must not turn a deaf ear and say that that's their problem, and we must not say that that's not us and we are safe here, because just as the Africans go, so go the African Americans. And we have to come to grips with this, ladies and gentlemen. We have to come to grips with the fact that we are going to be called upon to speak on behalf of the African American race. We're going to be called upon to talk about our position and where we stand. And we're going to have to role play this and practice this so that when the time does come, we are ready to take on a conversation. We are ready to speak from a perspective of a proud, dignified people. But we cannot do that if we think ourselves to be lower than a refugee. We are not refugees and we're not immigrants. We are non-immigrants. And that is what the big argument is all about. Can the African Americans be put back in the category of an immigrant? Can we treat them the same way that we treat our immigrants? Can we expel them from this country just like we're going to expel those immigrants who are non-documented? Well, we are documented people, and it has been documented many, many times and over before that our ancestors was here on this ground long before Christopher Columbus ever thought it was necessary to come here. And we must at all times remind those who are lost, who don't know about our history, who we actually are. We must remind those who want to forget that we are first world people, indigenous people. We must also keep in mind that we must carry ourselves in a genteel, dignified way. We must oftentimes revere ourselves to be the first Asiatic people. And we must let people know that we are not Johnny-come-latelys, and we cannot be put in the same category as immigrants. We are ancient people whose mothers and fathers built this country. And when we built this country on the concept that we would allow our ancestors to guide us, and that they would be the first precedents that we would wake up in the morning and pay homage to by pouring libation, by giving homage to our ancestors. Is like calling on our mothers and fathers in the morning to lead us, that we lean not on our own understanding, but on our ancestors, and they will help us direct the path. Yes, we believe in God, and we are a monotheistic person who believe in the one God, but we also have deities and ancestors who are closest to God. And we can speak to those deities around us, like Yam-Ye, Shango, also Ishun, Obatala. These are deities that we acknowledge and pay homage to. These are deities that are closest to us, that we can commune with. We do not fellowship and worship our deities. We commune with them in remembering who they were, so they can continue to guide us and speak to us and give us favor. We have to understand that being the first world people means we must set the example. Yes, we are the Africans, and the Africans are us. And at the end of the day, the only question is to be an African or not to be. And it's very vital that we should get it through our heads that there is no question about if we are the Africans abroad or if they are us in the diaspora. We are one people with one voice, one message, one mission, and one aim. One voice, one message, one mission, and one aim. We aim to get over the grain house, and we aim to be the first world indigenous people. We are the ancient old people, and we are the oldest people on this universe. And we're not a kind of being, we are mankind. There are some out there that are a kind of being, meaning they're not human, but we are the human being, and we are universal people. So we depend on the four corners of the earth and the elements, the fire, the water, the oceans, the air. We depend on the universe as Mother Nature gives breath to us, and as Mother Nature speaks to us and opens all us and preserves us. And as Mother Nature sends out the deities to assist and to aid us and to help us as we start our plight. And our journey and our Mayafa has been a long one, but we too have a Mayafa, just like the Jews have. We have a history of brutalization, but we've come up from the bottom. And after the bottom comes the top, and we're on top now. Like it or not, we will be the new leaders of this generation, and we must get ourselves in position to lead. Those that are born of the air sign, who are already in the atmosphere, and those that are born of the fire sign, you know you are the leaders, and you've been called to lead this caravan. We must not think ourselves to be backward people, even though we the Geechee people. We must not think ourselves to be backwater Geechee girls, because we have overcome. And now that we've overcome, those that are dying off and who have a 0 birth rate know this. We don't have to tell them. They will be telling us by printing their own articles and documenting their own fate. But it's vital that we should look at our African brothers who are in trouble now, who have decided to stand strong in solidarity, who have decided to come against this fraudulence that has been perpetuating their country. I looked at the beautiful countries over in Africa, the beautiful areas, just beautiful, gorgeous, that we might not ever see. All we will see is the swollen bellies and the children that are suffering and those who are living in the camps who are struggling. But they don't show us the beautiful cities that have gone up and have developed themselves. They don't show us how African Americans could take our skills and our graduate degrees there and utilize to help our brothers and sisters. But some kind of way, we are going to reconnect together, whether the Anglos like it or not. We are going to fellowship and reconnect our efforts together again, because we belong together, because they are us and we are them. Like it or not, we can no longer perpetuate the Christian story to our brothers and sisters and have them worshiping a dead religion. And if they hear us talk about this is a dead religion, they wonder what is going on. They thought they had the best to offer when someone introduced Christianity to them. They did not know that they had it all along when they were bowing down the trees and mountains, when they were going to the water to leave offerings and doing rituals at the rivers. They did not know that they were not just bush people, but they were God's people, and they were connected properly. They did not know that they would become disconnected once they start fellowshipping to an unknown God that cannot hear them. They did not know that this new Christianity would bring about missionaries who would lie to them about their heritage and their gods. They did not know that these missionaries were coming to rob them in exchange for giving them the Bibles. They did not know that fellowshipping in the churches and getting the Holy Ghost was not really the Spirit, that it was something borrowed from the Africans that they had all along, that they didn't have to put their lives up and pay out all their money to get in exchange for a God that is devoid of power. They did not know that they gave them our slave masters' religion that they used to whip us in shape with, that was devoid of power, only to make us fearful so that we would not run and take out to the wild blue yonders to get our freedom. They did not know what struggle we had in trying to be a Christian and trying to stand to the beat of the drums. They did not know that we went off in the backwoods and we fellowship amongst ourselves with our old traditional gods and with our old traditional ways. They did not know that we didn't want Christianity and that we would give it back every chance we got. They did not know that that's not what sustained us. That's not what allowed us to advance. They were under the impression that Americans had advanced because they had Christianity, but they did not know that Christianity was one of the things that held us back from our brothers and sisters. They did not know that it was devoid of power and that it was fake and that no one was coming down out of the sky to get us. They did not know this. But now they're finding out who the real African American is, and they're finding out we're just like them. We are no different. We suffer the Crab syndrome just like they said we did, and they will suffer it too once they rub shoulders with the Americans here in the United of Snakes. And they did not understand why we cried so much about our slavery and how come we couldn't get over it. They didn't realize it wasn't the chattel slavery that it was not the kind of slavery they had. It was one that was beaten into submission. And they thought it was the slavery where you was held for 7 years and then let go. How much is it that our African brothers and sisters just don't know about us and will soon find out slowly that we went through a different Ma'afa than they did. And that's what the difference is our struggle and how we came through slavery and our forefathers came through slavery. But we are still one Africans. I want you to know that if you're listening throughout the byways and on the air, we are still one. And we will always remain as one. And as one we shall be, with one aim, one mission, and one purpose. One aim, one mission, and one purpose. We are one. Forever, Zuwate. Thank you.